Good morning. Things were pretty quiet. They're really kind of quiet anyway, but just before I was going to start this recording, things were just chopping sideways right here. Markets were up a little bit, and they can see. I'll stretch this out so you can see it. They just started to push up into this little resistance area here. So weekly trends are still up. We just continue to monitor, the lower highs or the higher highs and the higher lows. And we've got our line in the sand here. And on the daily time frame, we got that bottoming tail bar that formed yesterday. It looked like prices were going to continue to move lower, but they held this little support level right here. Buyers came in, very bullish, pushed prices back up again. And we look at this on the intraday time frame. You can see, what happened there was from what I explained yesterday. I know it's a little crunched up there, but we had this little sideways range there, and prices broke down through it. And I mentioned, there really wasn't much support here. Now, the other concept to, learn, or that I teach, is that, okay, once you have a big break of support, and then there's very little underneath that, or a price void, is that what can happen that can change your bias? Well, a pivot can form, and then I'm changing this to a 5-minute. A pivot can form, and then, as it did right here in the morning, and that gives you a new reference point of support. Now, the assumption is after a crack that prices should make new lows. This wasn't in the downtrend yet, but in intraday, but it had a nasty crack below some support. So then you had the higher low, and that's supposed to then be followed by a lower low. Rather, it made a higher low. So we start to go sideways, and we get another swing high up there, and then it holds that support level again. So the initial break in the morning that happened here, which normally gives us a bearish bias short-term intraday, not from the daily perspective, since it's still an uptrend, and not from the weekly perspective, but if you're an intraday trader, that kind of a break sets up a bias. Like, well, this can go lower, and this is how we continue to monitor what's happening and say, well, it's not happening, and maybe we need to reconsider that, and the possibility that prices can turn back up, or they could have stayed in a sideways range, but then they popped back up into the end of the day, and now they're pushing up toward the prior highs up here. But the bottoming tail bar is a good sign for the bulls. It's continue to go sideways, or for whatever reason it breaks to the upside today. We shall see. And there is something going on here that's interesting. We'll take a look at that in a second. So the NQs, same bottoming tail bar. We got a little wick on the top there. Just an inside day here so far. It's pre-market, so can't give much thought that as far as an inside day, since the day is just beginning. But it's moving up a bit, but not like the S&Ps that they look like they're going to break to a new high. And this could be one of those scenarios or situations that what was underperforming, in this case the S&Ps, even though they are performing fine compared to, say, the transports, which are below resistance here, and they've come off of this low here at the 200 MA, but compared to the NASDAQ, which has moved up so strongly, the S&Ps are underperforming relative to the NASDAQ. So it's possible that we're going to see, sorry, switching around like that, the S&Ps kind of play catch-up, and they begin to outperform versus the NASDAQ. So what's of interest here, I had passed the oil chart, that wasn't what's so interesting, even though they're weak, is the fact that bonds had this gap down, and they're sitting on this little shelf of support right here, and they continue to be weak here, and that's going to help the markets, the equity markets, to be able to move higher. So you may want to keep an eye on that, and if you don't have bond futures, you can use TLT. You can see up against that prior resistance. It's pretty much the same on the weekly, and the fact that it's moving down here pre-market. Now, of interest for me, anyway, is this gap up in Siena this morning, right into this area. So it's gapping above this swing high, and it's trading between 2650-ish, right up here. And it's not that far from here, but a gap like that, if it can hang here for a little while in the morning, and could be 5 minutes or so, and then takes out a high, I think it could be a decent gap trade, first thing, because it's a very sizable gap here, clears resistance. Ideally, it would have been a little bit smaller, but 2550-ish, 26, yeah, so it's not quite that high. Let me just clear that. I can't see. Yeah, it is. So it's not that far from that high, but with a gap like that, maybe it could actually exceed it. So we shall see how that plays out. One of the big things yesterday was the fact that financials were so weak, and the market did come back even in the face of that. And we've talked about this head and shoulders top. It did not break through the lows here. However, well, it did not. I'm looking for my symbol here. I guess I'll have to type it in. JPM did. And this has been, one of the strongest leaders in this group, and it's been underperforming, and it had a nasty day. It's up a little bit here this morning, but this head and shoulders top, excuse me, this head and shoulders top has broken through that neckline there, suggesting it's going to go lower. That little red line, the 200 MA is right there. That will be a focal point. It begins to set lower down there, and we'll see what it does. But it's got plenty of room to drop, so you're going to want to keep an eye on those financials. Citicorp, which has been outperforming. It typically never did, but for some reason it is. It had a nasty crack, and it came back up, and it's within a range here. And so I'll keep an eye on that. And Goldman Sachs has rolled over. It broke through the 200. Patterns suggest that they're going to go lower. And Amazon tickling into that 1,000 level again. Trying to get up into there. Went up in there yesterday and backed off. So it's trying to break through. You got the bottoming tail bar there, and it's a big, focal point to see that it can get a close above that. So that's it. Have a great trading day, and we'll talk tomorrow.